Hey everyone, welcome back to another third episode thoughts video, and today... Yeah, that. Because we're talking about Spy X Family, and this is a show that I've been super pumped to talk about, so we're going to dive right in. Actually, that's a lie. Before we dive right in, let me go over what third episode thoughts is for anybody who's new here. So, when I watch a show, I will watch the first 3 episodes, regardless of whether I think it's fantastic or whether I think it's god-awful, because every show deserves at least 3 attempts. And if you strike out 3 times, you're out. I will look at things like the characters, the story, the art style, the music, and determine whether or not I feel like it's a show worth continuing. And that's generally the rule that I've used for many shows, and this is no different. So with that out of the way, let's dive into Spy X Family. So right out of the gate, this show already had a pretty high bar to clear because along with Shikimori Isn't Just a Cutie, I was watching a returning favorite this season. That returning favorite was the 3rd season of Kaguya-sama Love is War, which is one of my favorite rom-coms of all time. I watch it in dub, I watch it in sub, and I laugh at both just as hard. It's so good. And I'm going to be talking about it on Friday. You probably already know my thoughts by just what I said there, but either way, the 2 shows that I was watching aside from Love is War, which was Shikimori Isn't Just a Cutie, and this, Spy X Family, had a massive bar to clear. And if you watched yesterday's episode of Third Episode Thoughts, you already know how Shikimori Isn't a Cutie did. So, how did Spy X Family do? Well, just at a risk of killing the watch retention on this video, I'm going to continue watching this show. But here's why. So right out of the gate, we have a spy, a telepath, and an assassin. And no, this is not a setup for a walks into a bar joke. These are the 3 main characters for the show. We have Lloyd Forger, Your Forger, spy, and assassin, and Anya Forger, who is the most adorable telepath you will ever freaking meet. Lloyd, also known as Twilight, is set up at the very beginning to be a very stoic, focused, finish the mission, move on kind of character because, well, something happens in the very first episode that is clearly a mission done, see you later kind of deal. So after that's been very clearly established in episode 1, he's given a mission that requires him to assemble a fake family. And this is where things begin to get interesting because he is a spy who now has to rely on others. It starts out by him adopting Anya, and she is a telepath, so she can read all of his thoughts, which to some degree makes her seem smarter than she actually is, but on the same hand, she's very perceptive aside from being a telepath. So that also plays into her reading a situation pretty well and being able to help where she can. The other character introduced into the fray is Yor, who is an assassin. And this is super interesting because she is kind of socially inept, at least from what it seemed at the beginning, but she's also very capable. Physically, she's also very capable murderously. Is that a word? I don't know if that's actually a word. Either way, she's good at killing things. So right out of the gate, we're given this super interesting setup, and this show plays very heavily into dramatic irony. And for those of you who don't know what dramatic irony is, it's where you as the viewer know more than the characters on the screen. And this is true for 2 of the 3 characters, and that's why things are pretty interesting. Lloyd Forger is obviously on a mission and has to create a fake family, but because he's a spy, he can't reveal why he's doing what he's doing. He has to come up with a story for it. Yor is an assassin who's trying to blend in so that she doesn't get arrested, she doesn't get picked out as an assassin, so she wants to fake a family so that she can somehow hide from people who might think she's an assassin. Both Lloyd and Yor are looking for the same thing, but they don't actually know why the other is looking for the same thing, but they agree because they both lie their way into believing one another. This is where the dramatic irony comes in, though, because Anya is fully aware of what the 2 of them are and why they're doing what they're doing, and she uses her telepathy to push things towards better outcomes, and it's always super interesting to see. We see it once in episode 2 and once more in episode 3. And actually, I guess we did see it in episode 1 as well. We've seen it in all 3 episodes at this point. Overall, these main characters are hilarious together. They play off of each other really well. It's a super enjoyable thing to watch, and the moments that are funny are brought about because of the way that the characters play off of one another. And it also raises the question of which characters are acting and which characters are being genuine, and are those 2 personalities mixing, and will there be some kind of payoff or change to certain characters by the end of the series? It's really interesting because it's a kind of a good way to mix the overarching plot with a conflict, because we don't know if by the end of Lloyd's mission, which is of course the overarching plot, is there going to be a family at the end? Is he going to just up and leave, or will he still be there for them? That's the conflict mixed in with the end of the actual overarching story. So whether that's resolved even this season or not, I don't know, but I'm really excited to see if it is, and I'm just so pumped. So overall, just the story alone made me want to continue watching this show. Easy as that. It's fantastic. If you guys want to just stop here, go right ahead, go watch it. It's great. But I got two more things to talk about, which is the art style and the music, or rather, the sound design. So getting into the art style, it's nothing special, but also nothing terrible. It's not crazy in terms of a bunch of really wild animations. The art style itself is fantastic. It's sort of this pre-war European look mixed with some kind of spy aesthetic like you see in the old Bond films. It's really cool. The color palette is actually really pleasing, and it's really cool because it seems modern while also kind of bringing about this sense of older aesthetic. It's kind of hard to explain. You just kind of got to see the landscapes to understand it. And of course, it's a fictional world, but the design of the world is pretty interesting. It almost looks like a pre-war France or Europe, some city in Europe kind of deal. And overall, I just like looking at it. The animation does what it's supposed to without being overly done. The handful of subtle touches they make, like for example, the sparkles around Anya's head when she's using her telepathy ability, fits perfectly. I genuinely enjoy the subtler effects that they use, and some of the more obvious ones, like when Anya gets really excited, you see stars in her eyes, that kind of stuff. The shadows over the eyes, the facial designs are fantastic. That is something, actually, I'll point that out. The facial changes in the characters is really interesting, specifically in the eyes a lot of times. For example, when Anya is up to no good, she gets that little smile on her face, which is adorable. It's more pronounced in the manga from what I can see, but either way, her mischievous smile is fantastic. Yor gets very intimidating, especially, again, in the eyes when she is being an assassin. And Lloyd, which we see this in episode 1, but we also see it in episode 3, which is this ability of his eyes to go from these very serious eyes to a more fatherly, wide-looking set of eyes. It's really cool. The amount of attention paid to the eyes is really cool. And I mentioned the eyes design in the last video I did with Shikimori Isn't Just a Cutie. The eye design in that was fantastic. This, it's not so much the look of the eyes as it is the shape of the eyes, and I love the way they play around with that. It's so cool. Aside from that, though, like I said, there's not a whole lot of like crazy animations. They play more so with what works for the scene, and I can appreciate that. In terms of the sound effects, especially when it comes to the music, top tier. Easy, top tier. I'll put it this way. I am a person who pays very close attention to the music in a show, and I am usually really good at picking out when it changes, when a new song comes in, that kind of stuff. But if the story is really good and has me invested, and the music fits so well, sometimes I won't notice it, and it just works in the background, and I have to go back and pick it out again. That has happened so far 3 times in this show. Generally, I'll be surprised for me if it happens once, maybe twice. This has happened 3 times for me, so kudos. The music they picked fits perfectly. The slow jazz, the spy sounds, the darker tones, the upbeat and fun sounds they make when Anya's around, all of it is just great. Speaking of Anya, there is something they changed from the manga. Now, I've only read a few pages of the manga just to sort of get an idea of what the art style looked like in the manga and if it was translated well into the show, which it was. But something they did in the manga that was changed in the show was the presumed sound effect of Anya's ability, because there's sort of this, I guess at least in English it was translated to a crackle sound when she uses her ability with the sparkles around her head. And the sparkles are there, and they're very subtle, which I like because it's not this very prominent in-the-way thing. But instead of using a crackling effect, they use a more subtle sort of tone. Which is fine because, honestly, using that tone makes it more noticeable to the viewer. So even if you happen to miss the subtle sparkle effects, you hear the sound of her using her abilities. It's a really subtle touch, but it's something that's very appreciated because it makes the actual use of her abilities more noticeable. At the end of the day, I'm going to continue this show. I don't care what the toxic members of the internet say about it. It is a fantastic show, and I hope you guys agree with me. If you do, or if you don't, leave a comment down below letting me know if you do and why, and if you don't and why. I'm genuinely curious to see what you all have to say. But aside from that, thank you so much for watching this video. Spy X family, a winner, which is nice because now I'm down to 2 shows that I'm watching this season instead of 3. But either way, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you all in the next video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and have a good one.